And thank you for teaching me something. What's that? That it's okay to say no. That protecting yourself isn't selfish. That boundaries matter. I hugged her tight. Later, alone in the RV's bedroom, I looked at the photo of Sarah I kept on the dashboard. We were at the Grand Canyon in that picture, 30 years ago, both of us so young. We did it, I whispered to her. We took the trip, and we came home. I slept better that night than I had in years. Grandpa, can we go camping? Just like you and Grandma wanted? I looked at Emily. She nodded. Yeah, I said. Yeah, we can do that. The next weekend, the three of us drove to Hocking Hills, an hour southeast. We parked the RV at a campground, hiked to waterfalls, roasted marshmallows. Sophie slept in the Murphy bed. Emily and I stayed up late talking, the way we used to when she was young. Thank you for not giving up on me, she said. You're my daughter. I never would. I just need a few weeks, I'd said, hating how my voice cracked. The severance package, it's tied up in... It's always something with you. He'd pulled out his phone, not even looking at me. I bought you a bus ticket. Next one leaves at 7. That gives you 4 hours. Then he'd walked away, just like that. His father, standing there with one duffel bag containing everything I still owned after the estate sale, and he'd walked away. I stood in the middle of Denver International Airport's Terminal A, watching the taillights of my son's rental car disappear into the parking garage. My phone was dead. My wallet contained exactly $4.23, and I had no way to get back to Boulder, 60 miles away. At 62 years old, after 35 years as an aerospace engineer, I never imagined I'd be abandoned at an airport by my own son. When you're blind, your ears compensate. Sometimes you hear things you wish you hadn't. It's fine, I muttered. Not like it matters. A son abandoning his father, the man continued. It's a particular kind of pain, isn't it? The person you raised, loved, sacrificed for, walking away when you need them most. Something in his voice made me look at him closer. You sound like you know something about it. I do. He turned his face toward me, though his eyes remained hidden behind the dark glasses. My name is William Ashford, and I have a proposition for you, Mr. Matthews. Robert Matthews. Most people call me Rob. Rob. He smiled slightly. Tell me, Rob, are you a good actor? I blinked. What? Can you pretend? Can you play a role convincingly? I guess? I mean, I've never... Here's my situation, William interrupted, his voice dropping lower. In approximately 15 minutes, my driver will arrive to take me to my grandson's estate in Cherry Creek. My grandson, Carter, is a manipulative, greedy young man who's been trying to have me declared incompetent so he can seize control of my company, Ashford Real Estate Holdings. Perhaps you've heard of it? I had. Anyone in Denver had. Ashford Holdings owned half the commercial real estate in the city. Shopping centers, office towers, apartment complexes. The company was worth billions. Tomorrow morning, William continued, there's a critical board meeting. Carter has lined up several board members to vote for my removal, citing my age and my blindness. He's prepared medical experts, fabricated incidents, built an entire case around the idea that I'm no longer competent. That's awful, I said. But what does this have to... I need a son, Rob. William turned fully toward me now. Not a grandson. A son. Someone who's been with me, who can testify to my capability, my sharpness. Someone whose presence alone will throw Carter's entire strategy into chaos. My heart started pounding. You want me to pretend to be your son? I want you to be what you clearly are. A decent man who's been knocked down by life but hasn't lost his character. Carter has never met my son, because my son died 40 years ago in a car accident. He was 22. Carter knows I had a son. Everyone does. But he's built his case around the idea that I'm a lonely old man with no family support. But I'm not your... No one at tomorrow's meeting knows what my son would look like today. You're the right age. 62? Yes. Perfect. My son would be 62 if he'd lived. We say you've been living abroad, engineering work. Just reconciled with your aging father. Can you do it? I should have said no. Should have walked away. But I looked down at my duffel bag, thought about that bus ticket, About the foreclosure notice waiting at a house I could no longer afford, about Jason's taillights disappearing. "What do I get out of this?" I asked quietly. William smiled. "Dinner tonight, breakfast tomorrow, a guest room at my estate, and if you help me keep my company out of Carter's hands, I'll make sure you're compensated generously. Enough to get back on your feet. Is that acceptable?" "Why me? Why not hire an actor?" Or, "Because I've been sitting on this bench for 40 minutes, Rob, listening to this terminal. And in all that time I heard dozens of people. Stressed travelers, angry parents, impatient businessmen. And then I heard you and your son. I heard a father who still spoke with love despite being abandoned, who offered help even as he was refused. That's the kind of character I need tomorrow. Not an actor, a real person." A voice crackled over the PA system, announcing a delayed flight. "So?" William asked. "Will you help an old blind man keep his legacy out of the wrong hands?" I thought about Jason, about the house, about starting over at 62 with nothing. "Yes," I said. "I'll do it." William's smile widened. "Excellent. Now, here's what you need to know." The Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the terminal exactly 15 minutes later. The driver, a professional-looking man in his 50s named Thomas, greeted William with obvious respect and familiarity. He showed no surprise when William introduced me as his son, recently returned from Dubai. "Welcome home, Mr. Matthews," Thomas said smoothly, loading my duffel bag into the trunk. "Your father has spoken of you often." The drive to Cherry Creek took 40 minutes. William briefed me the entire way. "The company was founded by my father in 1952, he explained. "I took over in 1978. We own 243 properties across Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. Annual revenue last year was $870 million. The board consists of 7 members, including myself and Carter. 3 are loyal to me. 2 are on the fence. 1 is firmly in Carter's pocket." "And Carter wants to?" "Sell. Break up the company. Cash out. He's already been in talks with a private equity firm. They'll liquidate 70% of our properties, slash employee benefits, maximize short-term profits. It'll destroy everything my father and I built, but Carter will walk away with an estimated $200 million. I whistled low. "That's a hell of a motivation." "Indeed. But if I'm declared incompetent, he gets control of my voting shares. Game over." The Ashford estate was breathtaking. A modern glass and stone mansion set on 3 acres, with mountain views that seemed to stretch forever. Thomas led us inside, where a housekeeper named Margaret greeted us warmly. "Mr. William, you're back earlier than expected," she said. Then she saw me and paused. "Margaret, I'd like you to meet my son, Robert," William said calmly. "He'll be staying with us." To her credit, Margaret recovered instantly. "Of course. Welcome, Mr. Robert. I'll prepare the guest suite immediately." Over dinner that evening, prepared by a private chef, William coached me on family history. His wife, Catherine, had died 12 years ago. His son, also named Robert, had been studying engineering at MIT when he died. William had thrown himself into work after the loss, eventually marrying again briefly, which produced Carter's father, who died young as well. "I wasn't a good father to Carter's father," William admitted, as we sat in his study after dinner. "I was consumed by grief, by work. He grew up angry, resentful. Passed that resentment on to Carter. So in some ways I created this problem." "That doesn't give Carter the right to steal your legacy," I said. "No," William agreed. "It doesn't." He paused, tilting his head. "You sound angry on my behalf, Rob. That's good. That'll read as authentic tomorrow." I realized he was right. I was angry. Maybe because I saw echoes of my own situation in his. Sons who didn't appreciate sacrifice, who saw their fathers as obstacles instead of people. "Tell me about your son," William said quietly. "What happened between you?" So, I told him. About losing my job at Lockheed Martin when they'd closed the Boulder facility. About hemorrhaging savings during the job search. About Jason's increasing frustration, his wife Melissa's none too subtle hints that I should move to a more affordable city. About the final argument 3 weeks ago when Jason had said, "Dad, you're drowning, and you're trying to drag us down with you." "He's not entirely wrong," I admitted. I did ask for too much, expected too much, but I was his father. I thought that meant something. It should, William said. Family should mean something. Loyalty, support, not just when it's convenient. We sat in silence for a moment. Get some rest, William finally said. Tomorrow will be challenging. Carter will be there, along with his lawyer and his medical experts. They'll try to provoke me, to make me seem confused or incapable. Your job is simply to be present, to be my son, to show that I have family support. What if someone asks me something I don't know? Then you say you've been away for decades. Some things you never knew, other things you forgot. But make it clear you've recently reconnected with me, and you've found me to be sharp as ever. I nodded, though my stomach churned with nerves. One more thing, William said. Carter will likely try to bribe you or threaten you. He's done it before with other people I've trusted. Don't engage. Just walk away. Understood. That night, lying in a guest room that was nicer than any hotel I'd ever stayed in, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Tomorrow I'd be lying to a boardroom full of people. Committing fraud, probably. Definitely walking a legal and ethical tightrope. But I thought about that airport terminal. About Jason's taillights. About being 62 and starting over with nothing. And I thought about William, a blind old man trying to protect a lifetime of work from a greedy grandson. Maybe we were using each other, but maybe that was okay. Maybe that's what family was supposed to be. People who needed each other, who chose to be there, even if it was all pretend. The boardroom at Ashford Holdings' downtown office was exactly what I'd expected. All glass and steel and leather chairs, with a view of the Denver skyline that probably cost more per square foot than most people's homes. Carter Ashford was 28, handsome in that generic wealthy way, with perfect teeth and a suit that screamed money. He stood near the head of the table, chatting with a severe-looking woman in her 50s, his lawyer, I assumed, when we walked in. His face went pale when he saw me. "Grandfather," he said, his voice tight, "I didn't realize you were bringing anyone." "Carter, I'd like you to meet my son, Robert," William said pleasantly. "He's recently returned from Dubai, where he's been working in aerospace engineering for the past 2 decades. The room went silent. The 3 board members already present, 2 older men and a younger woman, stared at me with obvious shock. "Your son?" Carter's lawyer stepped forward. "Mr. Ashford, your son died in 1985. "My eldest son died," William corrected gently. "Robert here is from my second marriage. I've been private about that part of my life, for obvious reasons. But given recent challenges, I thought it appropriate for him to join me today." It was a lie, but it was brilliant. By framing it as a second marriage he'd kept private, William had created a plausible backstory that would be nearly impossible to immediately disprove. Carter's jaw clenched. "I see. How convenient. I assure you, there's nothing convenient about losing touch with one's son for decades," William said, his voice carrying just a hint of reproach. "But Robert and I have reconciled, and he'll be staying with me for the foreseeable future." The meeting that followed was brutal. Carter's lawyer presented their case methodically. Incidents of William supposedly forgetting appointments, making poor business decisions, exhibiting confusion. They had statements from staff, medical opinions, financial analyses, but William countered every point with precision. The forgotten appointment had been canceled by the other party. The poor business decision had actually netted the company $12 million. The confusion had been a misunderstanding by a new employee who'd since been corrected. And through it all, I sat next to William, occasionally leaning over to murmur something in his ear, playing the role of supportive son, making it clear he wasn't alone. The fence-sitter board members watched carefully. I could see them reassessing. Then Carter played his trump card. "I'd like to call a witness," he said. "Someone who can speak to the questionable judgment my grandfather has been displaying lately." The conference room door opened, and Jason walked in. My son. My own goddamn son. He saw me and froze, his eyes going wide. But Carter was already speaking. "This is Jason Matthews. He can testify to my grandfather's recent behavior, specifically his pattern of trusting strangers and making rash decisions." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. William's hand found mine under the table, squeezed it gently. A warning. Stay calm. Mr. Matthews, Carter's lawyer said, you've had recent contact with Mr. William Ashford, correct? Jason's eyes darted between Carter and me. Yes, we spoke yesterday. He contacted me about a business opportunity. And during that conversation, did Mr. Ashford make any unusual requests? He asked me about my father, about our relationship. He seemed very interested in family dynamics. Carter leaned forward. And what did you tell him about your father? I told him my father was struggling, that he'd lost his job, that our relationship was strained. And how did Mr. Ashford respond? Jason hesitated. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. He asked if I'd be willing to help stage a scenario, to test someone's character. He offered me $50,000. The room erupted, board members talking over each other, Carter's lawyer smiling triumphantly. You see? Carter said loudly. My grandfather is so desperate, so confused that he's paying strangers to pretend to be family. He tried to recruit this man's son to help him deceive you all. What further proof of incompetence do you need? William sat perfectly still. Then he smiled. Thank you, Jason, he said calmly. You've been very helpful. Everyone stopped talking. I'm sorry, Carter's lawyer said. Jason has confirmed exactly what I needed confirmed. William continued. Yes, I contacted him. Yes, I offered him money. Specifically, I offered him money to betray his father and to help Carter deceive this board. Carter went pale. What? You didn't think I knew about your little arrangement, did you? William turned his head toward Carter. You and Jason met 3 days ago. You've been communicating via a burner phone. You promised Jason $75,000 more than I offered to help you prove I was senile and manipulable. You told him to be at the airport yesterday, to create a public scene that would make his father desperate enough to accept help from anyone, including me. Jason's face drained of color. How did you? I've employed the same private investigator for 30 years, William said. The moment Carter started his little campaign against me, I had him followed. Phones tapped, emails monitored, all perfectly legal with the right warrants, which I obtained through the company's general counsel. Everything you've done, Carter, I know about. Every person you've bribed, every lie you've told, every scheme you've plotted. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. That contains recordings, transcripts, financial transfers, everything. Carter's lawyer grabbed the folder, flipping through it. Her face went from confident to horrified in seconds. This is, she stammered, this is wire fraud. Conspiracy. This is criminal, William finished. Yes, along with attempted fraud against shareholders, breach of fiduciary duty, and several other charges I'm sure the authorities will identify. He turned back toward Jason. As for you, Mr. Matthews, you accepted money to betray your father and to help defraud a company. That makes you complicit. However, he paused. I'm told by my investigator that you initially refused Carter's offer, that you only agreed after he showed you photos of your father at the airport, looking desperate and alone, and suggested that the kindest thing you could do was ensure he found help quickly, even if that help came from someone Carter would later discredit. Jason's hands shook, I thought. Carter said you were senile, that this was the best way to protect Dad from you, that once you were removed, the company would pay Dad a settlement for his time, and he'd be fine. Did you take any of the money? William asked. No, Jason whispered. He was supposed to pay me after the meeting. William nodded slowly. Then he turned to me. Rob, would you like to press charges against your son? Every eye in the room turned to me. Jason looked at me with terror and shame warring in his expression. I thought about the airport, about his taillights disappearing, about 30 years of being his father, of little league games and homework help and college tuition, all apparently forgotten the moment I became inconvenient. No, I said quietly. I don't want to press charges. William tilted his head. Are you certain? He's my son, I said. He made a terrible choice, but he's still my son. The room was silent. Very well, William said. Jason Matthews is free to go. However, Carter, he turned back to his grandson. You are removed from the board effective immediately, and I will be pressing charges. You can't, Carter started. I can, and I will. Thomas, please escort Carter from the building. Call security if necessary. As Carter was led out, still sputtering threats and curses, William turned to the board members. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've established that I am quite capable of managing this company. Are there any further questions about my competence? The three loyal members smiled. The two fence-sitters shook their heads. Carter's ally had already gathered his things and left. Then this meeting is adjourned, William said. Except for you, Rob. I'd like you to stay. When the room cleared, William and I sat alone in the conference room. Jason had slipped out with the others, avoiding my eyes. You knew, I said. From the beginning. You knew about Carter and Jason. Yes. Then why the charade? Why make me pretend to be your son? William leaned back in his chair. Because I needed to know what kind of man you were, Rob. I've learned the hard way that blood means nothing. Carter is my grandson, and he tried to destroy me. Meanwhile, you, a complete stranger, sat here and defended me, and when given the chance for revenge against your own son, you chose mercy. He's still my kid, I said, even if he screwed up. Exactly, William smiled. Family isn't about DNA, Rob. It's about character, about choice, about who shows up when things get hard. You passed the test I really cared about. What test? Whether you were a good man, whether you'd choose integrity over revenge, whether you'd value relationship over bitterness. He pushed a business card across the table. I'd like to offer you a position with Ashford Holdings, Director of Property Development. It's a real job, not charity. You're an engineer. We need someone with technical expertise to oversee our expansion into sustainable building projects. Salary is $250,000 plus benefits. I stared at the card. William, I can't. I don't know anything about sustainable. You can learn, and you have something more valuable than immediate expertise. Integrity. That's rare, especially in business. My hands trembled as I picked up the card. Why are you doing this? Because my son died 40 years ago, and I never got to see what kind of man he'd become. But meeting you, watching you choose grace over grudges, I think he might have been like you. And that brings me comfort. William stood, extending his hand. Will you accept the position? I thought about the foreclosure notice, about my empty savings account, about starting over at 62. Then I thought about sitting next to William at that board meeting, about feeling like I mattered, like I had purpose, like I was part of something bigger than my own problems. Yes, I said, shaking his hand. I'll accept. Over the following weeks, my life transformed in ways I'd never imagined. William's lawyers helped me negotiate with the bank, saving my house from foreclosure. I started at Ashford Holdings, diving into sustainable development projects with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in years. But the most surprising change came one Saturday morning, 3 weeks after the board meeting. My doorbell rang. When I opened it, Jason stood there, looking uncomfortable. Hey, Dad, he said quietly. We stared at each other for a long moment. I'm sorry, he finally said. For the airport, for working with Carter, for all of it. I was scared about money, and I let that fear make me into someone I don't recognize. Someone who could abandon his own father. Jason. Let me finish, he interrupted. Mr. Ashford called me. He told me what you did, how you refused to press charges, how you defended me even after everything. And I realized I've been treating you like a burden when you've only ever treated me like a son. His voice cracked. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to try to earn it back, if you'll let me. I thought about William's words. Family is about choice, about who shows up when things get hard. Come in, I said, stepping back from the door. We should talk. We spent 3 hours at my kitchen table, really talking for the first time in years, about his fears for his family, about my struggles to adapt after the layoff, about how we'd both let pride and fear damage our relationship. It wasn't magically fixed. We'd need time, therapy probably, continued effort, but it was a start. As Jason left, he paused at the door. That job, Mr. Ashford gave you, you're really good at it, aren't you? I smiled. Yeah, I really am. I'm glad, Dad. You deserve it. A month later, William invited me to his estate for dinner. When I arrived, I found a surprise. Margaret had prepared a full Thanksgiving meal, even though it was only September. I never had the family I wanted, William explained as we sat down. But I've learned that you can build the family you need. You've become that for me, Rob. A son in all the ways that matter. We raised our glasses in a toast. To new beginnings, to chosen family, to the idea that sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to the best discoveries. 6 months after that board meeting, Ashford Holdings announced a major sustainable development initiative. I led the team that designed 3 carbon-neutral apartment complexes and a revolutionary green office building that became a model for the entire industry. Jason and I had lunch every other week. His daughter Olivia started calling me weekly to talk about school. Slowly, we rebuilt what had been broken. And William became the father figure I'd lost when my own dad died 20 years earlier. We had weekly dinners, discussed business strategy and life philosophy. He taught me about legacy. I reminded him how to laugh. One evening, sitting in his study overlooking the mountains, William turned to me and said, "Do you ever regret it, that day at the airport?" I thought about it, about the desperation I'd felt, about the risk I'd taken trusting a blind stranger, about everything that had happened since. "No," I said honestly. "It was the worst day of my life, but it led to the best decision I ever made, which was saying yes, choosing to believe in something, choosing to show up even when I was scared." I paused. "Choosing family, even when it chose me first." William smiled. "That's the secret, isn't it? Life gives us families of blood, but the families we choose, the ones built on character and loyalty and choice, those are the ones that last." He raised his glass. "To family, the one we choose." "To family," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. Outside, the sun set over the Rocky Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and for the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd found. A blind man at an airport had whispered a proposition, and in accepting it, I'd discovered that family isn't about who abandons you. It's about who stays, who chooses you, who sees value in you even when you can't see it yourself. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. And sometimes being saved means learning to save yourself by choosing connection over isolation, grace over bitterness, and faith over fear. That day at Denver International Airport, I thought my life was ending. Turns out, it was just beginning.